Very cool. We have a full global group today. Cool. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Maybe to kick things off, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Chelsea Davis. I am the Director of Product Marketing here at Crossbeam, and I will be your host for today. So welcome to the Ring the Gong series, a webinar series from Crossbeam and Gong, where we spotlight the tools, the workflows, and just have hopefully really cool and engaging conversations that help you all actually move the needle on revenue. So today we're actually going to be tackling something that every channel and alliance leader is probably navigating right now, and that's what happens to your partner programs when AI starts reshaping kind of that entire direct sales motion. So we'll get into a lot of really cool conversations around that. But before then, I am joined by these three lovely folks with me today. So I will let them introduce themselves. And maybe Rich, we can start with you to kick it off.
Sounds great. Chelsea, great to be on with you and the rest of the panel. Rich Steeves, I'm a founding managing partner at an advisory services company called Mountain Branch Consulting. We're particularly focused on an operator mindset in the go-to-market rev tech partner ecosystem space, and proud partners with both Gong and Crossbeam, which we see as essentially providing the fundamental layer, powering the next generation of partnerships. So really thrilled to be on with the team here.
Thanks. Welcome. Heatherly, maybe over to you.
Sure, absolutely. I'm Heatherly Bucher. Thank you, Chelsea, for inviting us. I'm pretty excited to be here with the whole panel. I lead alliances and partnerships for the Arena software solution at PTC. PTC is an enterprise B2B application company that owns a variety of solutions for mostly product manufacturers, so electromechanical product companies from household names to very large industry primes in various sectors. I oversee alliances and partnerships for one of the solutions, and our partnerships range from technology partnerships and systems integrators and platform partnerships to value-added services partners and referral programs of various kinds. And so excited to be here. We use Crossbeam, we use Gong as part of our Marcom tech stack and partnership tech stack, along with other things, and have also been really pushing into using AI in our processes, both for partnerships and sales, and of course, also with our own platforms as well to our customers. And I actually kind of sit on both sides. So I'm also on our product AI teams, in addition to our use of AI within our own processes. So always interesting to talk with other people about what we're doing in this kind of very new space.
Very cool.
I think that leads me. I am Mike Davis, one of the leaders on Gong's large enterprise and strategic sales segment. So my team is responsible for direct selling, but we work really closely with a variety of different partners, as you can imagine, in particular, hyperscalers, various different GSIs, and technology partners like Crossbeam. And so I'm really excited to kind of provide that angle and perspective today as well. There are some questions coming up about the overlap between the alliance team or the partner team and the sales team, and I'll try to chime in there where I can.
Amazing. Thank you. We're excited to have you all on today. Really interesting backgrounds, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of interesting insight for everyone. So cool. Maybe kind of to start things off, and set the scene a little bit. So Rev AI is moving fast. There's AI assisted prospecting, automated outreach, pipeline scoring, call intelligence, and so much more in this space. So direct sales teams are definitely adopting these tools at speed. And so I kind of want to start there. So this question is open to all of you, but from where you sit, what's the most significant change that you've seen in how direct reps work, and how is that starting to kind of ripple into your partner relationships? Maybe Heatherly, we could start with you.
Sure, I can start. So on our teams, I think And talking with partners and their sales team, so I have maybe a little perspective broader than just our own direct sales. I mean, obviously, reps are using AI. I would say, first of all, just as passive consumers of the platforms they regularly use, and AI is showing up, right? Gong is a great example, and we are definitely a full-in Gong team at Arena. And I think, exposure to AI and the platforms where they are is happened to every sales team, right? So whether it's Gong or Salesforce or whether they're using Copilot or Claude, that are just showing up in the things they use, AI and things like Outlook and PowerPoint, right? But I think what has been most significant, you talk about most significant change for us, is that familiarity gives them confidence to start developing skills. And I think all of us on this call who are fairly deep into AI recognize that, like everything, understanding how it operates and developing skills is going to determine the value you get out of it. And so for me, in working with our sellers and our partner ecosystem and bringing them together, the significant changes when watching the skills development, right? They're gaining skills, they're starting to use AI for their own work every day, not just passively consuming it in the application. So whether it's using AI to help them put together a better value proposition for a buyer, or doing some proactive research or finding a lead, using those skills and developing them means that when I bring them other aspects of AI through the partner ecosystem, they're more willing to understand what I'm bringing to them, things like Crossbeam, for example, or Gong AI for partner ecosystem development. So for me, that's the biggest change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe I'll just piggyback on that. I think this is a yes and conversation. All of that's happening at an unbelievable pace. I think what we're seeing through the first half of 2026 is the amount of AI capabilities, platforms, tools, the proliferation across the rev tech stack has been at a breakneck pace for most organizations. I think what I'm seeing, though, is the way that that's running up against the operating models and the transformation that those teams are having internally, because there's no limit to fundamentally the level of insight, innovation, and some level of automation, but it's happening in this very kind of fragmented way across most orgs. I think what's really interesting in the Crossbeam and Gong, platform conversation is the way that level of orchestration and the insights start to be to branch out across the enterprise. So I think for us, it's how are we thinking about the platform capabilities, the insights, the automation, and the AI, which is coming out at an unbelievable pace, moving perhaps faster than where the orgs, the operating models, the governance structures, and the teams of the future are still in definition themselves. So maybe, Chelsea, I think that's the insight I would offer at the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Curious, Mike, do you have any perspective on this? Kind of like the other side of the coin?
Yeah, I think kind of to tag on to what you just mentioned, Richard, like the process changes are well behind the technology capabilities, I think, in most cases. And what's interesting, if you think about what are direct sellers doing and what does that mean for partners? Heatherly, you mentioned a bunch of different things that have become a little bit commoditized and a lot easier to do now around account research and building POVs and staying on top of 10Ks and all of that stuff. What's interesting, though, how does it bleed into partner world? Well, in general, the reason that you would work with partners is because you're better together. And part of that better together story is your counterparty, your partner, having some type of information or some type of relationship or some type of capability that GPT can't just pull off the web and summarize for you. So it's kind of interesting. I think the expectations of direct sellers are increasing as it relates to capabilities that technology can make easier for them. But it's only highlighting the importance of like the stuff that isn't going to be commoditized, which is the actual process change management for someone like you, Richard, or Heatherly, the technology partner of a sense. How do these technologies solve a problem? Isn't something that GPT is going to be able to solve for us.
That's it. I just to piggyback on that really quick, what we're still seeing is a lot of analog and asynchronous operating models mapped up against the automation, the intelligence, and the insights of where the revenue intelligence capabilities and the account mapping are between the platforms. So a really interesting moment for most orgs.
Yeah, this next question kind of feeds into that, and like the stuff that can't be commoditized or isn't commoditized. There's like this narrative that we kind of keep hearing is that AI will make direct reps so efficient that they won't need partners for coverage anymore. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you all push back on that narrative? What's the partner value prop that maybe AI just simply can't replicate right now?
Oh gosh, well, that's a great question. I work in an organization, actually, I think, which is great. I work for the SVP of go-to-market, and he doesn't expect AI and Rev AI to replace our partnership programs. Matter of fact, really quite the opposite. And I think to your point, well, Rich and Mike, you both mentioned the better together. To deliver on better together, right, you have to identify what the value of the relationship is. What is the win, the opportunity or the need or the problem that you and a partner solve for the customer, right? So first you have to identify it, then you have to deliver on it, right? It's not just marketing. And I've worked in marketing when I wasn't in partnerships. I was in marketing for over 15 years. So I can say this, marketers love to spin tales and tell stories, but the best marketing is something you can deliver on. And to deliver in a partnership that better together, you need to invest time to validate, right, what that opportunity is or that need that you deliver together and solve, document it and actually do it and get partners to or get customers to tell the story of the better together. Brand is critical. AI does not AI can support this, can help us be more efficient in identifying opportunities of joint customers, for example, telling those stories, validating ICP overlaps, but it is not going to create that better together reality, in my opinion. It has to run alongside, and I think that was an interesting comment you made, Rich. I'm not seeking to replace everything analog in our work, right? Matter of fact, I'm seeking to let AI, do the things it can do really well so that we can actually spend a lot more time on the relationship development, the better together, and the analog.
Love that.
And so I don't think, I think that it's a wrong approach to AI to replace everything, right? Matter of fact, Gartner, not to go a little too off topic, but I think Gartner just released a study this week that 80% of the, I think it was billion plus companies that they interviewed basically have drastically reduced their headcounts in favor of shifting work to AI, but they cleared their budgets. But what the survey showed is they did not gain in outcomes, right? So they gained space in their P&L, but no improvement in outcomes whatsoever, right? So that to me shows maybe not a lot of forethought in what you're trying to do with AI versus what you need valuable team members to be working on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe just to dovetail on that, I think it's a super interesting moment, and I agree. I think that all of us have the opportunity to kind of rise to the occasion, and the things that make us innately human have never been more important in terms of communication, orchestration, articulation, vision. These are things that are uniquely, human skills and traits versus the reasoning, the scale, the automation that can be augmented through some of the platforms that we choose to adopt. Just looking at some of the comments along the way too, I think what's interesting in this moment is that I think we do have to have a healthy check on where the industry is right now, and maybe some of the change in the transformations that are happening within partner teams, sales teams, the number of chief partner officer role announcements that are out there are happening at a significant rate, some of which because that role is someone new is in that role every 18 to 24 months, which is talking about a huge change and transformation in that team, that function, because they need to deliver a different set of skills and value for the future. And I think what the market is looking for right now is to say, what's that role, what's that partner role and that skill that brings the best of better together in a way that's more supportive to the go-to-market motion, and how those sales teams are actually going out, winning and closing business. And I think there is a piece of this to say that the technology is requiring that we look differently at the way the role itself and the organizations have been modeled along the way to take full advantage of where the platform scale and capabilities are. So, Mike, I know just, having run multiple teams and functions on Gong forecasts, the role of my Monday stand-up call completely changed the minute that the team adopted the insights coming from the Gong forecasting module. Instead of debating, the myths and the hearsay, we had hard facts guiding, and we changed the conversation about how we were engaging with clients and with our partners, instead of debating, the numbers, the phone calls, et cetera, and the relationships and beers that had grounded some of those roles in the past.
Yeah, and I think that's a key aspect of AI just in general, is as long as you feed it the right context and the right data, it will have more knowledge than we can keep in our human brains as one brain. So being able to leverage that knowledge and use the creative thinking and problem solving that y'all have spoken to is really the key.
Mm-hmm. And that partner ecosystem data is so differentiated because it's so unique to each company and each organization. And giving teams access to that where they're already working is key. And of course, not to be super cliche, but relationships are human based, and that can't be replicated. Okay, kind of shifting gears a little bit, let's get into maybe some of the real tensions that some of this creates. So when AI is driving so much of the kind of nurture and pipeline activity, how do you make sure that partner source or partner influenced pipeline doesn't get lost or even misattributed? And is this creating tension internally, or have you seen any of that in kind of your inner workings or day to day?
Well, I'll jump in. So partner sourced, I think partner sourced needs to have very clearly defined and agreed upon definition, just like any sourcing attribution you're going to give, right? And so in our case, we don't today run channel, but we run referral programs, and we actually have about 5 different referral programs, different kind of classifications of partners input into the referral for attribution. And I sat down with our sales leadership, our marketing leadership, and we had, kind of very clear discussion of, okay, what are the current sourced when I added the first referral program about 4 years ago, and then we expanded. We had conversations. Okay, what are we going to call partner sourced? And because we really, in our case, we have only one attribution for sourced, right? And I think that's true in most cases, particularly where we're a publicly traded company. PTC is extremely, which I appreciate, extremely vigilant on ethics and compliance, and we're worldwide. We operate in many countries. So we have to run everything through our compliance and ethics boards, not just legal and financial review. And so it was very clear we needed to have a strong definition of sourced. And so we came to an agreement. What is partner sourced versus, inbound versus outbound versus, and all the other different attributions possible. So I think that's important for sourced, right? Particularly if you are in multiple geo markets around the world, different legal environments, you need to just sit down and do that work and have that conversation and document it, right? And in our case, we're required to, so we have SOPs. We created proper attribution tracking through our CRM. So we don't actually have a tension anymore with that, right? We did that hard work. I think influenced is much more interesting. And
Mhm.
obviously not as straightforward. You can have influence from multiple sources, right? And at different parts in the sales cycle, right? From the time the lead is identified all the way through to multiple opportunities, right? With that lead. Sometimes it takes more than one opportunity to bring a customer into the fold. And so I will say, like, Crossbeam, Gong, actually, with AI attribution, we use both of those and some other to identify partner influence and get that proper attribution, right? And it is a many to one in that. And I'd be interested in hearing, like, Rich and Mike, your experience, because I don't think we capture it all. I think we're probably still missing some partner influenced attribution. We just kind of keep pushing into different areas and having conversations and also being honest with ourselves, not trying to influence too much, from a partner perspective, being honest, okay, was this really valid partner influence or not, right? Not getting a little too happy, right? To recognize what AI thinks is a influence that may not be, for example. So I'd be curious what other people are doing with the kind of influence attribution.
Yeah, I think attribution is probably, in the top 3 conversations that every go-to-market team, and especially the partner teams, are having currently. I think it's the central art versus science conversation that's kind of most teams are struggling with. And at the end of the day, I think, Heatherly, you nailed it. Having a clear understanding of the different types of attribution, an understanding of the scoring, and then supporting it with the account mapping and intelligence to back up and provide the intelligence around that removes the opacity. And so it's the classic, in darkness, sometimes there's margin in a sales process, but that's a whole other conversation. But also, challenges, problems, deceit happen in the other side. So bringing those kind of elements into the light a little bit, I think is critical. I'd also add that the most mature organizations that we work with have very clear understandings of those attribution models between sourced, influenced, and partner-driven as another concept. And they're the ones that are typically, even in the way sometimes they may have the most constrained partner-led route to market, they're often some of the most partner-friendly organizations because they've aligned fundamentally from the C-suite down on those terms. The teams that are still struggling through those introduce more conflict into the relationships, and it creates more difficult opportunity for collaboration with partners.
Yeah, I think the more that the internal outcomes of what people get credit for and how they get paid and whatnot are aligned, the easier it becomes to have the conversations around what counts for what and for who. One thing that's important for our partner team at Gong is the partner influence, and specifically as we build out our overall partner program, how can they proactively create more partner influence across the funnel? So there may be an opportunity that my team has already created from a direct sale perspective or marketing brought for us or whatever. But one of the things you can do with Gong is know what's being talked about. So if we're having discovery conversations and it's a channel heavy sales motion for a prospect of ours, and they mentioned using Crossbeam, that's the type of thing that AI can automate to help our partner owner of the Crossbeam relationship say, hey, awesome that this group is using Crossbeam. We can get in there with you guys and help make this a stronger story. And that's a big kind of easy pull through for our partner team, is getting themselves more involved without needing to constantly ping every salesperson and ask, hey, have you brought up this? What's going on with that? So it's one kind of simple hack that AI actually can help bring the two sides together.
Mm-hmm. I love that. We do that. And, I think I think not only is it more effective, and as opposed to your point, hassling every salesperson if they've reached out to every partner that might be in the tech stack of that customer. I think it also really gives an opportunity for the partners to bring forward in that better together story, what their strengths are, what the relationships they have, right? In our case, because we're in the product lifecycle management process as a product companies. So it's perhaps not as tight as, say, like Gong and Crossbeam, you're kind of clearly in kind of the rev stack or the Marcom stack of a company. In our case, our tech stack our customers use and connect to is very broad across many personas, many buyers, many champions. And so if my partner team is able to recognize that this buyer also has this electronic design system, right? This EDA or this MCAD or this ERP, those have very different personas, very different users, very different buyers and champions. And so if we can reach out and bring those partners in and have those conversations, it really creates a much more complete picture of that buyer and their environment and what matters to them, and kind of, really what the reality of relationships and, the politics, if you will, or the geography in the customer itself, right, as it rolls up to the C-suite. And that's important. And that's something that our sellers would have a harder time getting without those partnerships, right? Because they're selling directly, in our case, to the VP of Ops or the VP of Engineering, not necessarily, the manufacturing owners or, design owners, for example. So I love what you mentioned, Mike, because that is, and we do actually use both Crossbeam and Gong, AI and Gong, to understand what those conversations are, right? That the buyers are, what matters to them, right? And what do they have in their environment, and what are they struggling with also? I think comes out beautifully in those conversations, and AI lets us, easily kind of roll that up without tracking down individual sellers and annoying them. I don't want to annoy our sellers, to be clear. Only when I have to.
Only when you have to, right?
Only for a good reason.
Right. Kind of along those same lines, what does like a healthy co-sell motion look like when one side maybe has AI augmented reps and the other doesn't? I don't know how often that comes up, so curious to understand that too. But does that imbalance create any sort of friction, or can it actually be an advantage for partners?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in. This is an area we see quite often. There's kind of like an imbalance or an inequity in the relationships, in their willingness to adapt and adopt either certain platforms, technologies, et cetera. I think it usually takes, like any good partnership, both sides have to be committed to the outcomes and goals, and everybody's on different steps of their own maturity curve, and it's about meeting people where they are with the capabilities that they have. So if you need to account share with me through an offline CSV file, that's fine. I can bring it into my Crossbeam environment, do that offline account mapping, and take the conversation forward. So part of this is that strength and partnership means meeting teams and talent where they are, but also providing best of breed capabilities and where we can kind of lead and drive some of that business together. So my instinct is that a lot of the conversations that are happening right now are actually happening between the vendors and their ecosystems about what are the technology choices that they're making, and are starting to drive those conversations down. So a very large technology provider that we work with is using Crossbeam across their alliance teams and functions. We're seeing that then trickle out through those alliances into their partnerships beyond that. So this is one of those ones where kind of best of breed anchor tenants for some of these technologies are driving kind of ripple effects that cascade across the organizations, which is just good for everyone.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. We do the same, where we have strengths where we're more advanced, maybe, or more mature in our processes and our tech that we can make available to partners. We do. We often are the larger, more mature partner, but not always. We have partnerships with some very large ERP vendors, and they are more mature, maybe almost too mature. Because they become harder to work with, kind of like hyperscalers. And so, you meet people where they are. I think what are we trying to get accomplished in the partnership, right? And what's the priorities and the timeline and the resources we all have.
Yeah.
And so while I aim for scalable, repeatable, efficient processes where we can build them, we also try to be reasonable. Sometimes we hit dead ends with the process we built because of, and I will say, honestly, we're a strong Microsoft platform company, but we regularly hit a dead end with things like sharing SharePoint files with someone outside the ptc.com domain because Microsoft is not friendly in that way, or putting up a Teams channel. So we also have Slack, right? Licenses and Slack channels. And so, just a simple example is this is not related to AI, but we run Slack channels with some of our partners on a regular basis because we need that for that relationship. And at a public, a secure public Teams channel outside our domain just is defeated by the various IT layers of us and our partner, right? So it is what it is. We just have to go outside of what our process is in that standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Kind of to tee up another question here, like what does a partner program that's getting this right actually look like? And then to the other side, it's like, what are the warning signs that maybe a channel org is kind of falling behind here?
Yeah, this is like near and dear to my heart. So I've had kind of maybe the advantage of it, but also maybe the crime of building, shaping, leading a number of very large partner programs over the last 20 plus years in prior lives and contexts. I think this is like the golden era for a new age of partner programs that are thinking very differently about, Mike, you talked about the incentive and behavior alignment. Like AI is re-architecting what that value exchange is between vendors and their partners in real time for all of us. I think you're seeing it. I'll give you a really tangible example of where I see best of breed, partnerships and programs evolving. Something as simple as partner locators, discovery, refer a partner, and how you connect a partner to a seller. These were, in the past, directory driven, by location, like non-intelligent, we would describe them today, kind of artifacts of a different era of partnering. The ones that are increasing what I like to call like the signal architecture and informing those recommendations, so that whether you're a seller or a customer, looking for the right partner to deliver on the outcomes you need in that vendor context, that it's informed with all of the data, the insights, the intelligence, and the strength of that partnership. So the best of breed programs that we see are investing in partner intelligence on a much more significant level. And it's not just the choices of technologies that they're using for helping the sales cycle. It's also, much, maybe said differently, not just the transaction, it's much earlier through that discovery phase, and bringing those kind of insights to the market earlier. The ones that are not, I think, are going to struggle in this next iteration, as customers want to engage very differently, as does the field, in understanding who are the right partners that will help them on their transformation journey.
Mm-hmm. Anything else to add there, Heatherly or Mike?
Not really. Rich captured it really well. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, very solid answer, Rich. Okay, kind of like we've touched on this a little bit in some of our previous answers, but from your perspective, like what are you actually doing on the channel alliances side to leverage AI, ecosystem intelligence, and those revenue insight tools like Gong or Crossbeam, and our partner teams starting to close the gap there, or do you think that there's still kind of a bigger disparity in adoption?
In our case, I don't think there's a disparity between us and sales on AI adoption. What we're doing, and it's interesting, earlier, I think both Mike and Rich talked about AI in the process where sellers are, partnership teams are. We talked about Gong and Crossbeam as examples. I think that's actually a really important point, by the way, because I think it's so easy. As we all know, AI is exploding and AI is showing up all the time. It's really hard to read. I mean, I was reading my kind of news feeds this morning. It's pretty impossible to read a news feed of any sort and not have AI in probably half of the, email summary of articles. And so, there's this feeling you have to put AI everywhere, you have to be using it all the time. But I think the tension, which we mentioned earlier, is adoption. Process change and adoption takes work. And it takes a willingness of people to change their behaviors, right? And change what they're doing day to day. And it has to add enough value. And first of all, it has to add enough value for them to keep doing it every day, right? It's kind of like adopting a new diet or a new exercise routine, right? It's hard to create habits. And so the best way to create habits, I think, in the workspace is to simplify and keep it where people are, right? And so, yes, with Crossbeam, for example, we have it embedded into our Salesforce for our sellers as well as our partnership team, because that's where they are. The other thing we're doing with AI, to your question specifically, what we're doing, we have a partnership agent in Teams, which is, our place of work and communication for everyone on our team. And so we put co-pilot agents there. We have one partnership agent. Originally, we started out exploring a variety of agents, and we still have too many agents, to be clear, because other teams, right, have their agents, and we're having conversations about how do we make this easier, because what we hear from the users, from the sellers, from the coaches, from the solution architects, right, from everyone is, which agent should I go to for that? And which agent has access to what information and what context, right? It's confusing. There's still too many agents. But what we did do was one partnership agent, right? And that partnership agent has access to the things you would expect it to. It has access to Gong, it has access to Crossbeam, it has access to some internal SOPs and internal information about our partnerships. It has access to a very limited public set of partnership information on our website. So it's not allowed to go hallucinate and make things up by wandering through Reddit articles or things like that, right? Potentially. But I think, what we're doing is really trying to use AI to give them something of value, but that takes purposeful thought and structure. It takes understanding, Mike mentioned data and context. You need to make sure the data is the right data and as complete as it can be, and that the agent has context as well. But more importantly, then you have to give it to your users in a way that they will use every day, and that they will then develop a level of trust with.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't trust it, or it's not convenient to use, it will just become, and I'll show my age, shelfware, as is the case with all software, right? So that's what we're doing, and that's those are the challenges we found with it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe to dovetail on that, and Heatherly, I think that's so spot on, and I would love to see what you've piloted and launched and the value it's delivering. So I'll definitely follow up with you specifically on that. Super interesting. You touched on something really important, which is I think where we have clients that are bringing these capabilities to market, the challenge you're describing of agent orchestration and ensuring that it's delivering real material, safe and guarded value is a challenge. And what's interesting, and maybe to tee you up a little bit, Mike, is that there's also a level of this where things are starting to move beyond that, of saying, not just I want to go to another vendor's site and engage with their agent there, but how can I bring that experience to me locally through the integration with MCP servers? And so how do I think about my own contextual environment where I've got my index data that I know and I believe in and I trust, and I want to interact with the insights, the intelligence, and data that I'm getting from other contexts. That's changing the game. And so being able to either port that into co-working environments or think differently about the collaboration between a Crossbeam and a Gong, things are getting really, really interesting now. I don't know, Mike, if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, for sure, Rich. I think it's interesting when we launched sort of internal AI chatbot capability, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it, at Gong, it was pretty limited because we didn't connect it to anything outside. And the whole purpose of that is that you want to be able to have the reality, right? Gong was started as, delivering the reality of sales conversations to leaders and helping reps be better. And if you just go out and hallucinate off the internet, you don't get that. And with the advent of MCP, in Gong's case, we're both a client and a server, which basically means we can send information to other places and get information back as well. It's starting to really expand those use cases. And I think that the Crossbeam use case is a great example with Gong specifically, where within Gong, you can have an account brief, which is an agent that summarizes across a variety of different data sources everything that's happening within that account. And one of those, when MCP is connected between Crossbeam and Gong, is that all of that rich partner information that sits in Crossbeam is now living right in that same document that you're generating for whatever different use case within Gong from the AI. And as we do more of that, it becomes less and less important for reps to have to toggle between a million tabs. And I think that's a win for everyone. On the partner side, you're always at the table. And on the rep side, you're spending less time, trying to remember who needs to be brought in or what so-and-so said, months ago. So
I think it's game changing, honestly, what you guys are doing, building, and the amount of opportunity it's going to create for partner teams and sales teams is unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely. I think the cool thing about MCP servers and how many companies are building them right now, like you can leverage them anywhere, where you can add a custom connector. So if you're in Claude, if you're in ChatGPT, or OpenAI, if you're in Gemini, if you're using Glean, like you can bring in all of these different sources of data, and from Crossbeam's perspective is bring in that ecosystem data to create that more well-rounded view of an account and who's already involved, what partners can you reach out to for insights, how can you kind of change your pitch to tell an even better together story. So definitely really cool stuff all around. I think we are at time, but I think we have a couple of questions that maybe we can try and get answered here for folks. First one is, how much is Claude Code part of partnership teams today? Asking as a heavy user. Anyone have any insight there?
I think it's everywhere. I think whether core IT knows it or not, I think there's a level of proliferation that's happening. Huge amount of experimentation that's happening in this space. I think at the end of the day, the partner teams that we see moving the furthest, the fastest, are the ones that are credibly engaging with the technologies and kind of meeting where it is today. And so, again, my instinct is it's probably more prevalent than most companies are willing to admit, or maybe their security posture and guardrails allow for. But we're also seeing a healthy amount of, whether it's a ton of whether it's Glean adoption or other authorized Copilot implementations happening internally. But I think the genie's out of the bottle with the vibe coding capabilities and the way that we're seeing it across the teams.
Couldn't agree more. Cool. Anything to add there, Heatherly or Mike?
I'll plead the fifth, and we are a strong Microsoft shop. So
totally makes sense. Cool. Well, we are over time, so I just wanted to again say thank you to everyone who joined, and thank you to Rich, Mike, and Heatherly for all of your wonderful insights. It's been really interesting and definitely helpful to hear. A couple of things before we leave is this is recorded, so for those of you still hanging around, this will be in your inbox tomorrow, and feel free to share it with whoever you need on your team. If you are curious about learning more about the Crossbeam MCP or Gong MCP, just reach out to your team or your account manager. And for Crossbeam, we can at least get you access to our beta. It's for our Supernode and enterprise customers right now. One quick reminder and plug is we're 1 month away from registration opening for Gong Celebrate. So if you want to be one of the first ones to save your spot for that, I think Andy is going to drop a registration link in the chat here. And then, of course, we send out our weekly ELG Insider newsletter with ongoing content. And I'm sure we'll have some really fun articles and helpful snippets from this session. But other than that, again, thank you everyone for joining. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll route them to the appropriate person. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.